Good afternoon, everyone. I think we've probably got a few people that will join us just as the lunch queues were quite long, weren't they? So either people have gone out for some fresh air as well. But welcome back to the afternoon session. We have an hour and 15 minutes to talk about commercialisation and innovation work stream. We've got three great panellists who will introduce themselves shortly. But this is a session really about looking at how we digitise and look at AE and the rise of AE linked to commercialisation and innovation, how we as universities adopting some of the newer innovations that are out there to help ourselves to be more efficient, more effective. I'm Gurmit Clare, your chair for this session. I'm independent. I mentor on iCure, which Rose is going to talk about in a little bit. I do some facilitation and training for Praxis, and I had 10 years working at the University of Birmingham, looking after business development, business engagement, research impact, and working closely with the commercialisation team. So welcome to this session. It is going to be an interactive session because we're after lunch and we need to all make sure we don't fall into a slight daze in the afternoon. So there'll be interaction towards the latter part of the session. But we're going to kick off with some introductions and some presentations. So if I start that and work this way, Peter.
Good afternoon, everybody. Peter Wilkins. I work for Ploughshare, which is essentially the tech transfer office for the UK Ministry of Defence, and I'll talk more about that in my presentation.
Hi there, Nicholas Duggan. I work with Zuas. We're an innovation and enterprise agency. We deliver training and pre-accelerator programs and work on specific sort of technology and project opportunities across the university sector, and delighted to be here today.
Hi, I'm Rosie Jones. I lead iCure for the Set Square Partnership, which is one of the delivery partners for Innovate UK's flagship iCure programme. iCure is about helping your academics and sometimes your TTO team to look at technologies and to evaluate whether there is a market opportunity for them, and then to help people go through. So we have a number of programs which range for impact from PhD students who are just looking into commercialisation through a slightly more in-depth will it go, will it not go program, which is 8 weeks, through to our market validation program, which is Explore. If you've got any questions about those, I and my colleagues will be very, very happy to talk about them at any point. Thank you.
Thank you. So those of you who read the programme will note that Rosie is not Robert. So we've had a switch of panel slightly. Robert couldn't be with us today due to illness. So we have the pleasure of having Rosie on the panel, which is fantastic because we get the lens of iCure. And that's going to be really helpful. So for those who've just joined us, this is going to be a session around assessing really how we do that bit of triage as university folk and understanding how we take academics, inventions, ideas, innovations through to fruition, and how can we do that more effectively and more efficiently in a time where we're all really pressured around metrics, we're all really pressured around resource, and time constraints are challenging as well as income pressures are on us. So we're going to kick off with a couple of presentations, firstly by Peter. So if you want to use the clicker, Peter, to share your thoughts on the topic.
Thank you very much. As Gurmit has said, we're hoping this is going to be interactive because I don't think any of us on the stage are claiming to have all the answers. And I think how it might work is I'm going to talk about commercialisation in the UK MOD and Ploughshare and how we approach the work that we do. And that will outline some of the difficulties and the challenges that we face, which I think will be common to a lot of you if you're working in a similar space. Certainly I was in the room next door before lunch, and there was a lot of overlap in terms of the discussion there and the things that will probably come up in my slides. So I'm going to talk about the problems that we have, and then the other panelists will hopefully come up with some solutions, and maybe we'll have some discussion about how you solve those problems, and I can go away and copy your ideas. So I'm Peter Wilkins. I work for Ploughshare. I have a background in MOD, so I've worked in MOD for about 15 years. I don't have a background in commercialisation, and that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is to try and pick your brains, as I've said. So I've been with Ploughshare about 15 months. Prior to that, I worked in various other bits of MOD, So I'll give you a quick introduction to Ploughshare, tell you what we do and how we try and do it, give you a couple of case studies, and then put up some of the problems that we have, and hopefully that will facilitate some discussion and some input from others in the room. So Ploughshare is, as it says on the slide, we were established in 2005. We're a bit of an odd organisation in some ways. So we're a limited company, but we are wholly owned by the UK MOD. So we sit on that private sector, public sector boundary, which creates some challenges in terms of how we interface with MOD. So we're not civil servants. We don't have the same access to all the information that a civil servant would have. That can bring additional challenges. But essentially what we do is we work with inventors across the Ministry of Defence and slightly more widely across government to attempt to create additional impact and value from their inventions. So we take intellectual property from inside government and we license it perhaps to an existing company, or we create a spin-out company to exploit and to carry forward that invention. So if you've ever worked with MOD, you might be familiar with the way that it's structured. And this slide is an attempt to represent that. I'm aware you probably can't see the detail from the back, but essentially what I'm trying to say is it's really messy. So we sit in the middle of this really confusing, interlinked network of organizations. Some of them you might recognize. So DSTL, the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, we worked very heavily historically with them. In fact, we were created by them back in 2005. We work a lot with the Atomic Weapons Establishment, who you can see down there on the bottom left as you look at it. But essentially, there's 250,000 people represented on this diagram. So there's about 200,000 in the armed forces. There's about 60,000 civil servants. And any one of those people could come up with an invention or a good idea or a design or an approach that has value. So Ploughshare is part of the system that tries to extract that value. You can see immediately there's a challenge. So Ploughshare is an organisation of about 30 people. This diagram covers about 250,000 people. So there's a mismatch in scale. We can't talk to all of these people about intellectual property or about commercialisation or about all of the stuff that we would want to talk to them about. And as I said in an earlier slide, there's an additional challenge because it won't surprise you to know that MOD is a very process-driven organisation. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There are layers of organisations. There are handoffs between organisations. There are overlaps between organisations. So essentially all of the IP that comes to us has already flowed through a number of organisations. The inventor might sit 3 or 4 organisations away from us. And so making those connections and keeping those connections is really difficult. I can talk more about any of these organisations if you want to be bored, but in the interest of time, I'll move on, or try to. There we are. So many of you will be familiar with this. So we don't operate in a vacuum. Obviously, there's a drive within government, and there has been a drive within government now to take advantage of knowledge assets and intellectual property. So 2021, the Rose Book was published, and you can see the kind of things that it talks about. And then in 2022, the Government Office for Tech Transfer was created to try and further that agenda. So we're part of that system, a small part of it. We have a limited role. We don't do everything. We don't do intellectual property. So all of the intellectual property that we touch has already been looked at by a patent attorney or by an intellectual property office somewhere in MOD. And we're focused on exploiting that intellectual property. We do a whole load of stuff. Again, you might not be able to see the detail. It won't surprise you, some of the technologies that you see on there. What I guess might surprise you is that a lot of these technologies are not really military technologies. So some of them obviously are. There's things like weapons technology. There's things like electro-optics. Some of that is obviously very specific to defence and to the military. but a lot of it is quite generic, and that sometimes surprises people. They think it's all about tanks, guns, and bullets and rockets, and there is some of that, but it's a small proportion of what we touch. Another busy slide, you won't be able to see this. Essentially, all this is trying to lay out is our process. So starting on the left-hand side, as you look at it, we've got a number of gates, a number of what we call readiness levels that take something from an idea on a piece of paper through to something that's been licensed and is being manufactured and is being sold. I'm sure I can make these slides available afterwards, or if you want to discuss this in more detail, I'm around for the rest of this conference. So please come and pick my brains if there's something here that you want to discuss in more detail. And then I thought I'd just finish with a case study. So I said that it's only a small minority of what we do that really is focused on the military, and this is a good example of that. So a lot of what we do is healthcare related. Obviously, when armed forces are deployed overseas, they have healthcare needs, and there's a lot of people in MOD who are focused on developing systems to address those needs. And this is one example. So pre-symptom health, which we span out, or we're in the process of spinning out really, is really a sepsis diagnosis tool. And if you know anything about sepsis, you'll know that it's a big problem. It's a big problem in defence. It's an even bigger problem in outside of defence. And you can look up the figures for the number of people that are affected by sepsis and the cost of sepsis, and obviously the whole problem of antibacterial resistance and all of that stuff. So this came out of DSTL, so there was some work done, which essentially looks at the body's response to an infection before symptoms appear. So at the moment, what you tend to do in hospitals, if someone is at risk of developing sepsis, you just fill them with really powerful antibiotics just in case they catch it. And obviously that's a bad thing when it comes to resistance. So what this does is it looks for the body's response to sepsis before symptoms are really visible. So it might only be 2 days before those symptoms appear. But if you can see that there's a growing risk of sepsis, that enables you to be a bit more targeted with your deployment of your antibiotics, and hopefully that decreases the risk of that resistance that is a problem. So again, more detail of this on our website, and happy to talk about it in more detail. And there was a slide with some challenges on, but
we're saving those for the end. That's it. Thank you, Peter.
That's all from me for now, but I'm going to pass over to Nicholas. Thank you.
We will have opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that presentation and for setting up the session so well. So, yeah, as I said, I'm Nicholas Duggan. I work with Zuas. We've been working in the university sector since we were founded. I've worked in this sector since about 2012. We do 3 things. We do essentially training to upskill individuals and teams. We deliver pre-accelerator programs, and we support projects and fledgling businesses while the sort of team is still only half a team or has got gaps in it. So we can fill some of those. My team, we're experienced kind of practitioners from industry. So we've worked in innovation consulting, design consulting, marketing roles. We've done finance, we've done fundraising. So we're not knowledge exchange professionals, and we work really well with knowledge exchange professionals. I think we complement them beautifully. We're kind of on the same wavelength. We've all ended up on this interface between academia and society and business, which is a really important interface. And just, you know, the COVID vaccine, you know, really brought home, I think, to everybody how important the work done in university is in terms of moving things along. So again, Peter showed his very messy, as he said, organizational model. Mine is very, very simple. So I have a small team. A couple of them, Richard and Linda, are here with me today. We were a small team. We come together as Zuas, and we work for about 30 clients. We tend to do about 15 projects in any given calendar year. That's a really simple business. It's really simple to manage. A little bit of zero and a little bit of marketing and social media, and just be nice to your customers, and it kind of runs itself. In contrast, the job that you've got to do is very, the business school term is complex. So you're stuck in the middle in your relatively small knowledge exchange teams, and you're targeted and tasked with supporting very, very many academic researchers and marketing the output of their research to tens of millions of companies potentially. So the sort of the potential links between individual academic researcher and organization must run to the millions. So an incredibly complex task, and frankly an impossible one. So you can't possibly support all those academics, and you can't possibly find all the best companies and organizations to link them to. So you know, how much can you actually do with the resources you've got and with the hours that there are in the day? And of course, this isn't a new challenge. Other people have faced this. So again, what's grocery retailing got to tell us? So if you go back to the 1970s, if you went to do some grocery shopping, you might be given a list of things to buy on a piece of brown paper or on the back of an envelope. You went down to the shop, you handed it into the shop assistant. They went around and picked everything off the shelves. They put them in a brown paper bag, and you paid in cash. And then somebody had the great idea that you could actually take everything that's behind the counter, put it out front. People would come in, walk around, pick stuff up themselves, and then pay for it. And then that was taken a step forward by actually paying themselves by card or cash in the last decade or so. So a complete change in how grocery retailing was done. And in the first instance, you know, the Arkwrights of the world served people who could walk to the shop. The supermarket, you know, anybody who within driving distance can get to that shop. It's a completely different model of retailing that would have been unthinkable, say around 1970 or before. And why I included it is to make that point, but also, you know, what you've really done here is you've got the shopper, the individual consumer is doing the work. So, you know, that's the business model. The business model is we don't do it, they do it. And again, I think that's something that converts to the knowledge exchange world really well. Your academics are extremely bright people. They're extremely fast learners that just haven't been taught or shown how to do knowledge exchange. And when they've been taught and shown how to do it, and they've maybe done it once, or the person in the next office has done it once, we can get them to do a lot more of the heavy lifting and really move things along. 20 years ago, with the tech revolution that we saw these marketplace business models emerge. And this broke the sort of needing to be able to drive a car to the shop link. So you can now buy something online from anybody, anywhere in the world, or anybody who wants to sell can sell to anybody. So again, a huge change. And these organizations whose logos are shown there, new organizations which couldn't have done what they do without this capability and without this business model. But mostly what they're doing is stuff that's fairly low touch. So, you know, you know what you're buying. You're buying a book, or you're buying a DVD, or you're buying a used sofa, or whatever it is, or you're downloading an app which does something quite clear. Your world again is different. Your world, as well as the complexity of all those academics and all those organizations, every transaction you do is unique. Every piece of tech, every product, every service is unique, is different. So the terms and conditions, the license fee, everything has to be renegotiated from scratch every time. So really difficult one to grapple with. So AI is the new big idea. It does these things which are listed there. So it can do many things. We can plug it in different places. Again, just Peter referenced the earlier conversations. I would as well. The one this morning where people talked about the need in the UK economy for greater productivity in order to keep living standards high and to keep budgets for knowledge exchange and universities generally high. This is the productivity tool of the next 10 years. So how can we reimagine knowledge exchange in the age of AI? So I think there's this, you know, using the model that I've demonstrated here of KE, and obviously there are others, but I think it can play a role in all three. So on the academic research side, you know, I think there's a job to be done. It's what we've been doing as Zuas. We do it a particular way, which means getting in front of people and running workshops and running training with them. I think there's an AI-enabled way of doing that, which reaches more people. I think there's an AI way of interviewing an academic about their project and what's in their project and what opportunities there are and where they're at with them and what different applications there might be. And I think there's a lot of stuff you can tease out of an academic and out of a project using AI. So I think that's something which is going to happen. Obviously, within the KE team, the work that you do in terms of getting patents written, freedom to operate searches, writing up flyers and marketing materials. There's various ways AI and generative AI can write some of that for you. And then on the organizational side, it's not just about having a AI find the university and the academic with the best technology. Their job is to create the next generation of products and services and to spot the trends and the trend signals in the market. So there's a higher level AI which does that, and out of that falls some pretty clear targets that we need technology which does this at this price point, at this scale, with this sort of environmental footprint, and that can then help find people in academia in a very efficient way. So I think we're at the forefront. The people that are using AI and the people that are developing AI systems are saying, look, this is really, version not even 1.0, is version 0.4 or 5. It's in its infancy. It will be disruptive. We don't know what the final thing is going to look like, but I think we all probably feel that 10 years from now, the way KE is done will look quite a bit different from the way it's been done for the past 10 years. Through the deployment of the power of AI. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the sessions after these presentations. So that's kind of the end of my intro to this. Again, thanks to Gurmit and thanks to Praxis Oral for the opportunity to present today. Thank you all for coming to hear us. And Richard and Linda and myself have a stand outside as well. And anybody who wants to come and talk to us, we'd be delighted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Peter and to Nicholas. Rosie, I just wanted to come to you and get your reflections on what they've both spoken about, slightly different viewpoints. The simple model and Peter talked about, which I want to find out a little bit more about, because your model very much looked like a university of, you've got a lot of counterparts to deal with. But what's your interpretation of how you're finding kind of this interface piece working in an ICUR space, but also from a university perspective, Rosie?
So I think, we see a very small number of academics coming through the programs that we run. And I think what's really interesting to me is the fact that we can work with them very directly as individuals. But we do see a huge breadth of technologies that come through, a huge number of different people. Some of you in the room that I've worked with before, coming in with different technology, different TTO experience, different that kind of thing. So I think actually seeing how some of the AI might work in some of the fields that we're looking at is to, for example, what you were talking about, we ask in ICUR for our entrepreneurial leads to go and investigate 5 to 7 different markets, including a wild card. My favourite one is a dentist research, which I think was one of Sarah's actually, who ended up in Formula One. So, great, good for them. Actually, AI could give them, you could ask some of those questions and actually put in where would be opportunities for the kind of science or research that we've got. And I think that would be really helpful, actually. Yeah. I think from Peter's point of view in Ploughshare is the technology readiness levels that you had on your map is a really interesting ones. At what point do you interact between on those kind of things? Ask questions.
Absolutely.
At what point you had 9 different gate stages and 9 IRLs? So was that invention readiness level or something like that? Innovation readiness level. At what point do you as Ploughshare interact at that point?
Well, it tends to be across much of that spectrum. I guess, as I said, we don't tend to do much of the discovery element. And that's one of the challenges that we have. We're conscious that in that 250,000 people, there's probably a lot of stuff going on that we're not seeing. So we don't tend to get involved much at the lower end. I guess the bulk of our effort is kind of the IRL 6-7 stage when you're actually doing the licensing. but certainly that early stage stuff, a lot of it is, and a lot of you will recognise this, is around working with the inventors to figure out actually what do they have the appetite to do and where do they want to end up. And like many of the inventors that you'll be working with in universities, they're not usually motivated by money because they wouldn't be working for MOD if they were, right? So it's about how do you articulate the impact that can have in terms of military capability. So how do you make the argument that actually pushing this piece of intellectual property out into the automotive industry and allowing them to do some of the legwork of bringing it up the RL levels and then potentially buying it back in when it's more mature? That's sometimes a bit of a convoluted story to sell to someone, especially when this is not their main job. Yeah.
Any questions from the audience before we go into a more interactive session? Do you any questions for any of the panelists or anything you've heard? Go and send a mic around. Run with it. Oh, thank you, Yanni. We might have to use one of our mics. I think these are the only mics we've got. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks. You mentioned 3 possible interventions you can do with AI for KE. Have you applied those? Have you measured improvements already on current practices? What's the experience?
Nothing as rigorous as that. No.
Right.
No. So I've played around in this and done software in some of this, and I've spoken to people who've also been developing software, KE type software. And the thing they'll tell you is if we were starting now versus if we were starting 5 years ago, what we would build would be totally different. So it's a completely different paradigm now with the power of this. The links it can make, the insights it can find, can transform the way this is done, which we didn't have the power. So before we had databases, you basically, everything is a database. You put information in, and you print reports. This is different. This is just something completely new.
Not applied yet. In your experience,
not done yet. No, there's probably people working on it, but not executed. I don't think. And I don't know exactly what OpenAI will do, but they create models for specific applications. So I think there's a spreadsheet type model where you can get, you can get that, and then it's optimized for doing, pulling data out of spreadsheets. And at some point, I imagine someone will do something around innovation and knowledge exchange and the sort of creative process, and when that emerges and what that looks like will probably be a kind of a game changer. But again, I don't know what, they haven't spoken about when they're doing something like that. But I imagine MIT and places like that are talking to them about this, and they're probably working on stuff as well that we don't know about.
Any other questions before we go into interactive session? I have a question, just a quick one before we do interactive. Peter, you mentioned that you've got, 250,000 kind of network of people in quite a small team. How do you manage that?
Really badly.
What's your process?
So
I know you've got your process map, but sort of.
So I guess it's made slightly more complex by the odd relationship that we have with the MOD in not being civil servants and sitting on that private sector, public sector boundary. So we've got really good links with some of the organisations that were on that map that I showed. So DSTL, for example, we worked with them for 20 odd years. So we've got quite a flexible relationship with them, and we can go in and out, and we have access to their people, and we can talk to their inventors. That's not something we have for the rest of the MOD, and we're on a journey with that. I guess we're reliant on people in those organisations to disclose their IP and do it in the right way and talk to the right people so that it ends up coming to us in the format that we can work with. And I guess that's the same for many universities, I would imagine, which is why I'm hoping that there'll be some answers from the discussion. But it is a challenge, and we talked in the session before lunch about how do you balance that carrot and stick approach? How do you what you introduce in terms of initiatives to try and make those relationships stronger. And I guess in the case of the MOD, it's just the same but worse.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm just going to skip across there, see if I can access the mic to jump onto some questions that we can start to have a look at. Okay. Rosie's slide, which we've done. Okay, so we're going to look at some challenges. So what I'd like to do is encourage you to, if you've been in this room before, you know how this works. This is a session where you're grouping twos or threes or, sort of huddle together people behind you and think about this particular question and think about sort of the tools and techniques in terms of how we've discussed what might be help you to identify, prioritize most promising innovations in your institutions, in your ecosystems, and how are you doing it now and what might help you to do it better or to improve it, or are there any AI type innovations that you've come across that you think actually we're on the cusp of exploring something here that maybe if we were given some support we could do more with. So it's just a 5 or 7 minutes or so of discussions around looking at really what might be ways to triage, to look at pipeline, to look at new ways of the work that we do. So I encourage you to just turn around in groups, two or three, whoever you're working with, and in 5 or so minutes, if we could take 1 or 2 people to feedback and give us their thinking and thoughts, and we'll get some panel reactions as well. Thank you. Control it yourself, so yeah. Yeah, I am
Hello,
now.
hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Okay, everyone, thank you.
Yeah, we come back now.
If you could
Hello.
finish off your conversation, it's great because you're all so engaged in conversation. I want to break it off, but it'd be great to get some of your feedback. So we're going to just get you to put your hands up. So one person from your group, if you want to feedback, we'll start wherever. So and we'll run around with a mic. So just give us your thoughts and reflections on what the group's come up with. If one person from a couple of groups could, somebody wants to kick us off with thoughts and reflections. Thank you, David.
From our little, sorry, thank you. Yeah, there's a few from our group. So we've got some people looking at, well, it's more automation, I suppose,
Okay.
and how that can help in extracting information, say from licenses or other documents to help with due diligence, for example. Azure was mentioned as a great tool for, again, summarizing different documents and being able to then, use that. Helps with due diligence, but helps with marketing as well. I think in terms of, identifying really promising innovations, this is still kind of a people business, right?
Yeah.
It's finding the right people. And there are technologies, there are platforms that are out there, but it's still hit and miss as to how much that helps with networks. I think for some a bit, for others not so much. But I'm sure that will develop further. And then pattern searching was also mentioned, and there are some automation tools out there, some AI tools that are helping.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Any other feedback, reflections? The back, thank you. Just towards back on the right, Tani. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to say, disclaimer, I was an entrepreneur lead for an IQ project ages ago. So we all still believe that there might not be a shortcut from going and talking to other people and then understanding what the market needs. Even if we talk to everyone, there's still quite a pivots and turning around and then adoptions and iterations that comes with knowing the market, talking to people, and then trying to get to the right place. And it still might not be a unicorn or camel. So that's one thing. But also we were talking about how AI can help in general, and how KE would be in 10 years, as one of the speakers was saying. It might help with partnering quite a lot. So finding a correct partner and finding the right person to talk to. Yeah.
Any thoughts from the panels? Please do chip in if you have any reflections or comments. Yeah, I thought you.
Sorry. This is what she's. Hello, can you hear me here? Yeah, just no. Oh, yeah, there we are. So I'm with you on that. I mean, we were just talking about the fact that in the end, you still got to have a person making a conversation with a person. So however much you may get the AI to find the technologies in the first place that you're then going to work on and then actually go and commercialize them, you still got the human input. And I mean, of course, I mean, we worked out how to get rid of that, and then I'm putting myself out of a job. So there was certain things about that. So I mean, it would be feasible if one was being creative about this to actually have an AI tool that not only looked at patents but looked at research and actually said, okay, where's the most likely piece? At the moment the market is looking at this, what have we got 6 years ago that's working in that area? With a little drone that hovers over the academic and say, come and talk to this one, And then at the other end of it, do some AI which might map to the businesses that you were talking about earlier, and then see which of those businesses would work. But the challenge is, of course, is we've got someone from, Louis Vuitton Cosmeceuticals, who actually has got some technology that AI says comes out of the MOD, and someone in Louis Vuitton doesn't talk to anyone from the MOD. They don't know how to do that. They wouldn't do that, and actually wouldn't believe that the problem is. So both have you got the human thing where you're actually trying to connect, but also the human thing that doesn't believe the AI as well. How do we overcome that? I think those are things that we notice all the time. We introduce technologies, and then we go, well, that's counterintuitive. We're not going to go that way. So that's another challenge I think that we have.
Thank you, Rosie. Yeah.
With the risk of just not hogging the microphone, but I was just, I forgot to mention, one of the things that we said maybe in a few years GPT can provide, or what or other models, is role-playing as an expert or role-playing as a end user, and then fine-tune it to basically try to have a conversation and then come up with suggestions that you can use in a real conversation. So that's another one that you can use.
I think we need to be able to commercialise shape better if we're going to do that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So.
We were having that conversation earlier in the room. Anybody else, any thoughts? Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Sian Rodway from MDRX. I was having a really interesting conversation with Alex and Kirsty here, and actually not talking so much about using AI to represent those end users, or actually helping with some of the USPs that TTOs can offer, but actually the things that could drive efficiencies and increase productivity. So, for instance, pre-revenue companies who might be given some money to go and get a website set up to go and test the market, actually getting Gen AI to create the copy for that website. So instead of going out and paying a copywriter, and instead of paying X amount to the academic to invest in that, you could spread that across many more teams in order to launch, 5 pre-revenue websites rather than just one. So I think there's opportunities like that where things that sort of augment that TTO knowledge exchange process could be done far more efficiently using Gen AI.
Thank you. Any?
Hello, Usain Carter from Northumbria University. So, since we're talking about unicorns and camels, I suppose it's more about financials when it comes to how we prioritize the innovations. So I think the most important tools we need to use, or myself I use, I'm not saying that we need to all, market analysis, business modeling, business canvas modeling, probably market opportunity identification. It's a very important tool to separate which one is gold mine, which one is actually shoot moon. But when it comes to AI, I think the major problem with these technologies is the lack of data. We don't have much data to actually come on board and see how these old tools could come into one unified CRM system and try to automate the whole process. And to do so, we're stuck into confidentiality, we're stuck into multiple barriers. Most of them are social barriers between organizations to how to share these data. So I was talking to my friend here. Allow me to be your friend for today. So
we're all friends.
Yes, that probably starting with a unified CRM system internally to overcome the barriers between departments and how to enhance knowledge exchange between departments internally, and then replicate that into external level between whole universities could be a good start, at least to mine the data, to bring more case studies. AI could help here, from my perspective and my experience, in layering this up into making what's private more private, keep it private. What's confidential, keep it confidential from being shared with different, with who you don't want to share. And I think that's the role of AI here. And probably on the ultimate level, when we got the data set, we could actually then think about using GPTs and probably AGIs in 5 years' time to take decisions and help us take decisions. But AI will be able to take decisions himself.
Yeah.
So,
Data-driven approaches. And any thoughts from the panel just on market validation, business model canvas, those sorts of things?
I'll just chip in on that one. Is this working? Good. So your point about financial value is really interesting. And I think we really struggle in MOD to articulate the financial value of lots of the technologies we work with, because often the value is really long-term and remote and detached. And I guess the other thing that we struggle to understand and articulate is the kind of societal value that maybe isn't financial. So, I mean, an example from some of the work I'm doing at the moment is if there's an invention that enables you to clear up an accident at a nuclear power station, how do you capture the financial value of allowing people to move back into their homes 5 years earlier and all that? It's really hard. So I think we're really struggling to get our hands around how do you articulate the value. And I think your point about data is a really important one. And so one of the things we discussed was, AI is good if it's got good data. And maybe there's something around sharing data, as you've said, to allow the AI model to build up its understanding of what works and what doesn't.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I just add, there's some tasks that we do that we just hate doing, and I hate doing business model canvas with a vengeance. I think it's horrible. But so the idea of doing a report on a company or an opportunity and pulling all the data together and then just telling a machine to, I'm going to lunch now, do a business models canvas for me and have it when I come back is wonderful. Worth coming to Blackpool just for that.
Thank you. Rosie, anything to add? Or?
Just, I'm sure all the entrepreneurial leads would like to have an AI that did a BMC for them, so it would actually be fun.
Yeah.
It's what we based the whole programme on.
Yeah, there won't be a IQ. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions that I've missed? Anybody's hands go up that want to share? One in the back. Thank you.
Hi, it's just an observation really about the softer side of the adoption. So I'm a KE professional here. I'd also say I'm an innovation professional, and 6 months ago I wasn't. And now I work, it's Michael Cohen from university, sorry. My job is to help business win innovation funding with our academics. And I work with our academics carefully with generative AI to explore problems. We don't yet use AI to write bids, but we use it in the prep work to understand the problem. And Rosie on stage, it's Michael, I'm working with one of your academics and helping them to shape up their storytelling on their pitch deck, which they need particular work on. And we are using the old-fashioned method and things that I've learned, but we're also using AI. And so what I wanted to say to the offer to the group is you get better by doing it. By in 12 months' time, if you engage, you will be a better AI-powered KE professional than you are today. You have to do it with care. There are risks. So I also subscribe to the AI news and see what's happening. I don't want to get myself or my colleagues into trouble. There are so I take a risk approach to how I'm using it. But I just think it's brilliant. I think it's the most amazing tool for someone working in innovation who has to pretend they know about everything and comes to the party knowing about nothing. But 10 minutes later, I know a little bit, which I can have a useful conversation with a wide variety of businesses and a wide variety of academics.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next couple of questions. Now, the next one we may well have covered off, so don't feel you have to labour this one. But how can we update our approach to incorporate labour-saving tools? So I think we might have touched upon that. But the latter one is one that I really want us to focus on because we haven't talked that much about impact, and we have touched upon financial gains and revenues and rewards and metrics and business model canvases. So how do we value and articulate the non-financial impacts of commercialization innovations, and talk a little bit in your groups around how that's currently happening and what might be opportunities that come in the future that could support that space, because it's not so easy to measure those things, but it's all important. And with the SDGs and everything else, there is a drive towards having, demonstrating that societal impact in the work that we're doing in a broader KE lens, but also in a commercialization lens. So if I could ask you for the next 5 or 7 minutes to have same conversation in groups and just explore that topic a little bit, and we'll take some feedback and do some final wrap-up from the panel. Thank you. Right.
Hello.
Thank
Hello.
you, everyone.
Hello. Should we come back?
If we could
Ready?
do our final roundup of your reflections on this question, please. So if somebody wants to volunteer what their group's been talking about, say who you are and where you're from, that'd be great. Somebody kicks off. Thank you.
We decided that Annex A of ref impact studies are the best ones. So there are quite a lot of indications and types of impact and areas of impact. So that's quite complete, I would say. I could read it, impact on health and well-being, and then the socials, impact on creativity, culture, and impact on social welfare. And then there are metrics and how you measure them as well on the annex.
So utilising the ref framework,
Yeah,
the impact
exactly.
case study
Ref
lens
yeah.
is the kind of the go-to where you
Exactly.
measure. Okay, no, that's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on measuring the value of impact? Thank you.
Hi, John from University of Stirling.
Hi.
Yes, so we were talking about how you articulate the value. Is this on?
Yes,
Yes.
it is. We can hear you. Yeah.
How you articulate the environmental or social impact that can be generated separate to the financial, and that's really tricky to do, and it isn't always necessary to do. There are incentives, financial incentives, to going green or being socially responsible, and that speaks the language to a lot of people. And if it doesn't, then it might mean that they're already environmentally impact driven or socially driven. So when we think about integrating ESG or creating a net zero plan, it's a triple bottom line approach, and those are linked naturally. So there might not necessarily always be a need to separate social, environmental, and financial.
Thank you. That's an interesting point. Any thoughts from the panel on that separation? From an because I think from an IQ perspective, yeah.
Kevin's got me on there because I always have an opinion. I think and I would put my hand up as a card-carrying musician as well. My background is in late 15th century harmonic theory. No, there's never anyone in the room that's... Hurrah!
Yay!
I need to talk to you. You're only the second person in 30 years that's ever said yes.
I knew we'd find one for you, Rosie.
There we are. Ock again, mind thing. Anyway, so what I think is really interesting in this is not the ones which are non-financial and not environmental and social is a secondary part to non-financial, but actually non-financial at all. And I think one of the things that we are starting to look at post spin-out review and that kind of stuff is actually how much money does come back into an institution, into a university from spin-outs that you've made. And I've been at the University of Southampton off and on for 20 years. I think we've made not a lot, anyway, in reality, to the institution. And it would be interesting to see, apart from the University of Bristol, you can keep your hands down, who have actually made a lot of money from any of your spin-outs. And I think that's why we're talking about camels as much as unicorns. So, but I think one of those things is actually none of us are really very good at identifying exactly where a huge impact opportunity is likely to be. We do go into engineering, we do go into chemistry, that's where the high level is at the moment. We're looking now at optoelectronics. But actually, how do we know that there isn't anything in the back of the music department that's actually going to actually be more unicorn than it is sort of dog, if you like, or cat in my case. And I think, so it's literally a matter of trying to be innovative in how we turn over the next stone, I think, is one of those things. Because we don't know where the next opportunity is going to be. I used to work in employability and we'd be saying to the students that the jobs that they were training for, that they were going to be working in 20 years' time wouldn't exist. The job that I do now didn't exist 10 years ago. So I think the opportunities that we're going to be looking for in 5 years' time, probably at the moment, we don't know where they are. So,
fair point. Thank you. Any other groups want to share their thoughts on the value of the non-financials or what you're doing at your institution? Thank you.
trying to make this not too Southampton-centric. Sorry, Rosie. Tony Hill, University of Southampton. There's just sort of two thoughts I'd like to share. The first one goes back to probably about 15 years ago, where I was doing a sort of tech transfer role for the NHS. And we did some quite simple but credible modelling with the York Health Economics Unit at the time. And we were looking at non-financial impact of the implementation of certain innovations, and looking at that and looking at the probability of that, you know, to what extent that could be deployed. And the results are quite actually sort of stunning. And actually, in truth, the non-financial benefit well outweighed the actual royalty income that was going to sort of arise from this non-patent sort of IP sort of activity. So I think there are ways to model this, fairly straightforward. And then the final point I wanted to raise, and I'm happy to sort of share this if anyone wants to sort of approach myself or Rosie afterwards. Southampton in the last year has published a social values framework, because we recognise that there's a lot of innovation IP that's sort of generated that doesn't quite sort of align with sort of revenue income in the traditional sense. And we've set out a sort of quite helpful sort of framework based around KEF, REF, KE, Concorda and other measures, but we've gone into a sort of deeper dive to actually help the academics really articulate ways in which they can kind of frame that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that might be our last contribution, unless anybody else wants to quickly put their hand up. No? Okay. Thank you. So just finally over to the panel for a final few words before we wrap up this session, and you can go and grab a coffee before we head into plenary. Rosie, shall I start that end and work this way? Any top tips you want to share? Any insights?
For me, I think we have to embrace new technologies. I think hopefully soon we will work out how to do that safely without actually exposing our IP. That's my major concern about AI, particularly at the moment. But I love your idea, my colleague from here from Northumbria, about, you know, getting AI to tell us whether it's confidential and to keep it confidential. I think if it will do that, that's one of the things we need to do.
It's one of the lists that actually.
No, don't go.
How we could fight AI is actually by using non-AI.
Yeah, so I think it's great, and I'm coming to find out more about that. So that's my major concern. I think when I'm looking and I'm talking to entrepreneurial leads about the intellectual property that they have, and fundamentally I'll say to them the same thing that you do, is if you don't want to disclose it, just talk about it, what it does, not how it does it. So, you know, that's general. I think innovation is essential, and I think the moving towards non-financial impacts as well, I think, is something that we're going to be looking at more and more. So I think all of this is a great conversation.
Yeah, I just echo that on the non-financial impacts work. I think we all, the reason we're here is we're not here to make money. You know, we're here to make a difference. And the camels are important. If you bring in the VCs and the investors, they're looking for unicorns. We need to get the camels out, and anything which enables productivity to go up and enables us to do more can benefit the camels, because those are the ones that won't get the attention when resources are scarce. So I think AI in that way can have a non-financial impact as well.
Thank you. I haven't got much to add. I guess it sounds like we're all on the same page in that we all think that there's stuff that we could be doing with AI, or potentially, if not now, in the near future. I think those challenges around sharing and how do you get the AI to train itself on a big enough body of data that it actually gives you useful responses. And it's a shame that Robert's not here, because I think what Robert was going to talk about was an approach that he's developed or is using. So I guess I just encourage you to have a look at what Robert's been doing and see whether you think that might fit the bill. But thank you.
Thank you to the panel. Can we just give them a round of applause, please?